The second thing I think about every day is really not a thing, it's a person, it's my grandmother. You said you're a grandmother of 3 little girls. I was incredibly lucky to have 2 extraordinary grandmothers. One passed away sadly when I was 13, so I didn't get to know her, really as a teenager or as an adult. My mom's mom, though, thankfully, lived until I was 31. And then she tripped and she fell on the stairs and had a heart attack as she was on her way up to watch Dancing with the Stars, her favorite show. And my grandmother, had a life that I could not imagine. She'd been born to unwed teenage parents. They were 15 and 17. They were not prepared to be parents. They abandoned her for the first time when she was 3. Her earliest memory was taking the meal card they left her with and going to the cafeteria that was down the block in Chicago from her apartment building. She had a key and she had a cafeteria card. And they told her if she needed anything to go to the fire department that was a few blocks away. When she was 8, they finally said, we can't do it any longer. And they put her on a train with her then 2-year-old little sister by themselves to take the 2-day trip from Chicago to Los Angeles, and they had to switch trains in Phoenix. She lived with her grandparents. They also didn't really want her. When she was 13, they said, you have to go support yourself. She left her grandparents' home. She got a job working in someone else's home, which she called as like a mother's helper, but basically she was a nanny and a housekeeper, like while she was still a child herself. She still went to school. She graduated on the dean's list. In her 50s, she went back to college. So why am I telling you all this? It's an extraordinary story of resilience, although parenthetically, I loathe the conversation about resilience. We're like, how do we build resilient kids? And I'm like, how do we build resilient systems so that our kids can be kids and they don't have to be resilient? But my grandmother was very resilient, and she got into college. She couldn't afford to go to college. She went back to Chicago, I think vainly hoping to reconnect with her parents. Also, they said maybe they would send her to college. They then abandoned her again when she was 17. She got a job as a receptionist. One day, a young petty officer from the Navy walked into her office, asked for directions. It was my grandfather. My grandmother had no model of family love or support or healthy caregiving, like none. But she had teachers and guidance counselors at school who did things like pretend they'd accidentally brought 2 sandwiches for lunch so that she could have one, or who told her that she absolutely could apply to go to college, who told her that the past didn't have to define her. And she created a home full of just enormous kind of love and possibility for her children. She also gave just the best hugs, even though she said she didn't think anyone had really hugged her until her teacher hugged her in high school. At least it was the first hug that she remembered ever receiving from anyone except for her little sister. And my grandmother was born in this country before women had the right to vote. And she lived long enough to vote for her daughter for president. And so I also think about that because I think what can happen when we have both organizing, often organizing over decades and generations, and when we have people who choose to be optimistic that they can change their lives and the lives of their families. I think extraordinary things can happen. I also am not impervious to what I not affectionately call the forces of darkness. But I think about what we can do when we organize and we remind ourselves of what is possible when we persist, because we know that tomorrow can and should be better than today.